he's sitting in front of the computer. The computer is watching the bricks, and he's watching the computer, and the computer is counting 18,000 bricks in one day. That's his job, to make sure that the bricks are okay. 18,000. And he said that like he's working
Every
three
day.
shifts, he's working 6 days a week, and he's when he goes home and when he falls asleep, he's dreaming with bricks coming. And I was like, okay, and how much is I don't know how much bricks you need for a house. Is 18,000, that sounds a lot, but how much do you need for a family home? And it was like maybe 5,000, 6,000, 8,000. And I was like, okay, and when you dream, what kind of home do you build from how what kind of house could you build from 18,000 bricks? And he was like, I never thought of this.
Hmm.
And and that point was I was like, fuck, this is I'm here for 30 minutes maybe. This is I'm thinking like what we could build. So maybe I could not just make some smart photography series, but maybe I could ask questions that change the way how people think about the work that they do.
Cool. Yeah, Arian, we want to talk about this work of yours, Human.
Okay. I'm really
I got
happy
the
to
book
talk
from
about
our.
it.
Yeah. You just told me that you haven't talked about this in a like podcast or video format at all.
No, no, no. There were some talks back in the time. So when it was published and around on occasion of some exhibitions, but it since then I did two or three other projects, and I have a new book now, and it's kind of like this book was sort of uh, passed by other things. now,
Yeah.
now I was talking about these newer or more recent works, and as I was looking for like, do I have a presentation still of human? I kind of had this wonderful moment of rediscovering the archive and introducing, including some pictures in the presentation, which I didn't have
Awesome.
at the
How is
time.
that for you as a photographer with old works? Do you still like mm, use these works like to send him to awards or I don't know, think about them at all? Or is it like this is past?
Ooh. Well, it's human was probably the most successful work that I did, um, or maybe the most complex, or yeah, successful, not necessarily in the sense that it like success with the audience, but like success as I feel that it's complete and it's done and it's good. So because of that, uh, I often think back to the time when I was doing it, how I was thinking, how I was working, kind of like I like we have this saying in Hungarian that you have the furnace, and you always start from the furnace, or yeah, from the heater, from the center of the house you start, and
Mm,
and so to this work I often return to. Um, there are there was a period about a decade and like the beginning of my career after university when I did when I worked mostly in color, and I did mostly landscapes. And I really still like that feeling of working, going out, spending time. And I often remember those times with kind of a little bit of jealousy, regret to that young guy who had the evenings, for himself and who was able to leave for a complete day and no responsibilities other than doing art. Since I'm a full-time teacher at the university, most of the time I have to be there, so I really had to change the way how I work. So I try to find like a month or like 2 weeks or 2 months to produce something which I want, and then it's so there is a time pressure, and it's quite like a organizational feat to do
Mm.
something in a short period of time. So I oftentimes think back at to those works when I was able to work a little bit more relaxed and yeah, yeah. I don't
Interesting.
know if I answered your questions.
Yeah, you did. And that's an interesting, like I have this question I ask every photographer, like, and you kind of answered it, but how do you uh, how do you feel like the ending of a project? When is a project done?
Mhm. Okay. Um, well, it's different. It probably the answer is different for different projects. There's also another question which is connected to how it is ending, how it is starting. So when do you realize that you
Hmm.
actually are working on something?
Hmm.
It's a similar thing. Oftentimes, we are. I'm not a university student anymore, so I don't get assignments that much. I have to give myself assignments, but I normally just think about something, work on something, and then at a certain point, this uh, how to say, love affair becomes more like a commitment, and then the work starts. And normally, the moment when it ends, and probably this is why I had to tell this, how it starts. And so the ending is normally the moment when I don't find joy anymore in doing it.
Hmm.
So I had one very specific moment in when I was basically when I had to realize that I'm finishing one project, like a few- about a decade ago, that I went out, I found a nice spot, I set up my camera, I took the picture, and when I had the photograph and I was packing away and I was returning home, I kind of was thinking like, this is the best photograph that I did for this entire project. It's like it must be perfect. I went back, I had the films developed, and then when I looked at the film, it's perfect. Uh, it is the thing which I was working for in the past
Hmm.
2 or 3 years. But then I realized that it's so I already know what I'm doing. So there is no discovery. There is no, I'm
Hmm.
kind of like executing a routine which I totally mastered somehow. There are um, um, no mistakes. I wanted to use a different word for this, but uh, but yeah. So and then that picture got made it into the final edit. But every time I look at it, I know that that was the last. That was the moment when I realized that it's over.
Hmm.
The love affair is over. There
So
is
you're
no,
saying,
no no more surprise, no more joy, no more discovery,
yeah.
no
So you're
more
saying
unknown
you took
secrets.
the picture and you already knew, okay, this is it. It doesn't get any
Yeah, yeah,
better than
yeah. And I
this.
was really
This
happy
is the
with it
picture.
and everything,
Yeah.
but it was it. So you can sometimes I feel bad for those photographers who made their mark in photography with one specific styles, one specific
Mm.
topic that they photograph, and they have to photograph it in their entire life because
Mm.
that's what they are. It must be, I don't know. So, okay, I'm not those photographers probably, but for me, it does. So when I'm repeating something for for my gallerist or for whatever reason, it I don't feel that it's not taking me anywhere new.
Mhm.
Um, so so yeah, basically that's the. But there's another end actually. Finishing a project is the moment when most of the time I like to make books of the
Mhm.
projects, and I think many photographers give this answer, so that you make a book and then it's kind of like becomes irreversible. You have everything in one quite expensive outcome, and then you have to stick with it. You have to represent it. You have to kind of uh, consider it final, because if you don't, then you have to make another book out of it. So
Yeah.
yeah, but that's another uh, yeah. I often consider making the book kind of like a little bit a different project because it's
So with human,
yes.
I believe at first it was an assignment for the company, the brick
Yeah,
company.
it was I was commissioned by not a brick manufacturer, Wienerberger, but um, um, Horst Klöve, a German uh, art buyer. He was a
Mhm.
gallerist, and he was buying art for the collection of Wienerberger and for this brick manufacturer. And they had a company collection, which I suggest every company to have a company collection because that's fun, at least for the photographers probably. Um, but yeah, so he had this idea that he's not buying expensive pieces for the collection, but he's commissioning artists that he likes and uh, and asks them to create something related to the business that the company is doing, and so I had this funny phone call like, okay, like, would you like to do a project about bricks or a brick factory or something? And actually, a few photographers were already doing the same, so it's like a I was not the first and not the last in the
Mhm.
series, and I was as I remember, as I recall, I was asking for a bit of time to think about it, and because I was deep in my, I had to do my doctorate, I had to finish my doctorate, and I was quite busy with that, and uh, and then I was struggling. It was not going well, really, and I went on the internet, and and I started to type in bricks and and some very, very interesting things popped up immediately.
Mhm.
And in a few days I was sure that this is how I will finish my doctorate. So it's kind of like I was working about I was actually uh, thinking, not really working. I was thinking about the relationship between global and local, the personal and the general, or the universal,
Mhm.
and how these two, how to say, maybe we can say extremes or endpoints are relating to each other. And I was also um, wanting to write about human scale, and I found a photograph. Actually, it's not a photograph, a diagram of a brick that you have this shape, which is actually on the cover of the book. So if you have the book, you can take off the wrap, and there it is. So that was the first thing that I found. I don't know if people will see it or not. Yeah, yeah, that's it. So the human was not written on it, but the shape with some arrows pointing at the sides and the front and the top, and it said the brick has a face. So that
Mm.
was the face of the brick, and I was like, okay, so this like this object is it has a foot, it has a the faces, the so it's like this anthropomorphic, very basic form or shape, and we are projecting the human figure or the human qualities into it. And it got me immediately. It got me thinking like,
Mm.
how could I have this brick and talk about the universe, talk about everything, talk about the universal, talk about the very personal things, and so that was the spark. So I probably wrote an email back to that. Okay, I'm doing it.
That's really interesting that you say that because I I also studied photography and I did my master's about the search for extraterrestrial life. And there's this one quote, some astronomer said it, but it always like ingrained in my head. And that's kind of what you said, that you can only understand the greater things in the universe when you understand the small things. So
Mhm.
these two extremes and they're working together. So it's basically the same, like you said. That's really interesting about the scale.
Yeah, so yeah, probably it's ancient wisdom,
Mm.
but everyone has to make their own discovery, probably. It's like you cannot be just told. You have to have this experience.
Yeah. And I think like for me it's really interesting this concept like a company having their own art gallery and
Mhm.
then it's a brick company, you know? Like it sounds so crazy to me.
I think it was the CEO of the
Yeah.
time. I don't know if he's still around or not, but I, it, I imagine a person. I met him once on a event
Mm.
when they uh, presented these works, and um, and I imagine a person who is kind of like a photography enthusiast, and this is somehow a contribution to the uh, how is it? It's like the responsibility taking,
Mm.
in the field of art of a company which is where their business is construction and I think they burn quite a lot of gas while burning the bricks and whatever. So it's like kind of like they add to their business is adding to the problems that we are heading towards. And I think there is kind of like I imagine a person who is kind of like trying to do some good. And yeah, I'm really curious whether they still have that company collection or whether it's growing. I didn't hear from them for a while now.
Was that also like a physical place, like a gallery or something?
I think it's the headquarters. They
Mm.
probably decorate the walls of the headquarters. I don't know. It's like,
Interesting.
no, this is
Yeah, but
the research that we're going to do now.
but yeah, that's if you talk about it like this, like you imagine a person, that's when I thought about it in the first place, I thought it was so like crazy. But when you say you imagine a person, it makes sense because like a company, like it's not just a company, this body, like there are people behind it, you know? And yet, like for example, like SpaceX is it's basically Elon Musk, the person who's initially there, or
Who knows?
whatever, Zuckerberg or whatever, and this person has like favorites, and maybe it's art, and then they do it. Makes total
Yeah.
sense, yeah. But was the book wasn't the assignment. The assignment was the pictures, wasn't it?
Yeah, the assignment was to do something. So there was more or less a limited budget. So there was like so there was a commission and there was a budget,
Mhm.
and we were totally free to figure out something. We only had to consult about the idea with this art buyer, and and yeah, we I actually this was one of the works when I had this uh when I went to the factories and when I started to travel, and maybe we're going to talk about that as well. So I every time that I arrived to a brick factory, I was kind of like welcomed like I'm the cousin of the CEO. So I was like everyone was doing anything what I was telling. So we were a little bit pushing the yeah how far we can take it. We're like,
Mhm.
okay, now we are going to do a dexterity test with the workers. So you have to jump from one brick to the other. And they were like, they did it. And it was
Yeah.
very interesting, like how much time into the exercise do they start thinking that we are just, we are just playing. Like,
Yeah.
and oftentimes, as a photographer, it's like this, the first thing is the most difficult element oftentimes is like to not to take the picture, but to get access. And
Mhm.
and with this work, there was no question, no questions asked. And and that was absolutely liberating. So I didn't have to think about anything apart from doing what I'm, what is the cause for me to be there doing. Okay, so I didn't have to. Well, there are always these arrangements that you have to make, but of course, apart from that, there was no objection, or there was okay. No, I'm not right. In the beginning, there was a very important point and a very tragic point actually. Um, when and I think that was also somewhat uh, directing the work in a certain direction, which am really, I shouldn't say grateful because it was really a tragic moment, and for yeah, so it was. Uh, I would be more happy without this work and the book if that thing didn't happen. So what happened was that I went um, to the first brick factory. I had an appointment, first time ever. So I was like, I said, okay, to the work, and I had a appointment with one of the factory directors, and and by Tuesday, I don't know, 9 o'clock in the morning, I have to be there, and uh, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm going. I had my cameras and everything, and uh, and I called, I don't know, 8:30 just to make sure that okay, you guys are waiting for me, whatever. And they said, well, there's something, you shouldn't come today, and maybe not just today, but for 1 or 2 months, it would be better not to come. And I was like, what, why? Everything was set, and they said that a worker was cleaning under one of these robotic arms, and they uh, so the sensors were somehow not working properly, and one of these robots put a ton of bricks on the head of this guy, and he
Ooh.
died. So everyone in the factory is now a little bit stressed out, and if I appear there, everyone will think that I'm kind of like investigating.
Hmm.
And then yeah, I took 2 months off, right? right before the first moment, but and I had this terrible anxiety, terrible what is it, like this my conscience was, asking me all the time, was he cleaning because they were expecting the photographer to arrive?
Hmm.
Is it my fault?
Hmm.
How much of the responsibility is mine in this? So and and yeah, so I had a few I had a few months to think about this before I went to another brick factory uh, to start working on the project. So it was
Have you ever returned to that factory?
yeah, I later on, yeah, I did. But it was so I found uh, anyway, so I have my presentation ready, so we want to go
Yeah,
over the
let's see
presentation.
something.
I can start talking about that. But yeah, so there was a circle which I was doing, and I was visiting factories in different countries, and this particular factory, I just returned towards the end of the entire project to to take some pictures, but it was already then, by that time, it was mostly complete. So, do I share my screen if you if you agree?
Yes.
Okay. Uh, Actually, it's so nice to have a conversation with you without the presentations. But the present. So anyway, but I want to show some pictures. So maybe we can stop when we want to stop, or you just stop me when I start
Yes, yes.
my long monologue. So what you see here is actually the first page or the uh, inner cover of the book, and this is all the pictures, all the information, um, and yeah. So in I kind of from the very beginning I had an idea that I want to have a limit. So I was like, okay, let's pick a number. What would be a good number? Let's make it 80. So I made 79 pictures. So I didn't reach the limit. And I wanted to start with this because
This is the envelope of the book, isn't it?
yeah, uh, or a part of it.
Hmm.
Because for my I mentioned that I was working on my doctorate, and for for that work I was collecting quite a lot of things, and this work also took off as a I don't know, like a Google nightmare. You sit there, you type in all the words that are related somehow to human scale, to global, local, uh, uh, and endless number of perfect images or super meaningful images. You are just bombarded with them, and I started to collect them, and so even before I started to work on the project, I had a complete work done by other photographers in the past, I don't know, 200 years, and I didn't have to do anything really. So it was, I mean, honestly, I don't have to go and take pictures for for this work, and I had this. By the time I started, I had a few thousand photographs, which were which were representing what I was going after. And eventually, but how do you convert this into your own work? not working with archives. I mean, I didn't want to, and then I don't really want to work with archives. I like to take pictures, but I don't have to take pictures. Uh, and uh, and there was this idea at a certain point that I could inject what I'm what I found. I could inject into this location, which I have to deal with, and and I could find connections. So maybe find parallels, just like the first figure, you know, with the brick and the arrows. And I can also use this archive, let's say, or this database, uh, maybe that's better, uh, as a as a starting point for conversations with the people who I meet there, because
Mm.
that's visual, and 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 so that was uh, at a certain point in the work that became a method, you know, showing some of these photographs um, or using them as a conversation starters. And in the in the process, there were two books which I want to mention because they were very influential in the process. One was actually a television series, a British television series by I think he's originally Polish, Jakub Bronowski, um, and it's the title is The Essence of Man. So it's like the entire history of mankind, told in, I don't know, 24 episodes of 30 minutes, which is like I think it's a very funny, you know, you have to compress something into a very
Yeah.
limited time, and you have like you have endless, you're talking about endless time almost, and you have 24 minutes for one episode. So it's like, it's a very interesting, for me, it was very interesting. And Bronowski has a quite particular way of talking about uh, civilization, culture, history, evolution, and and his way of approaching the the topic opened so many how to say doors into how I could approach the work. And the other one was György Kepes. He's a Hungarian painter, photographer, theoretician who lived and worked in the United States, and and I think he was working on MIT, but I'm not sure. And he collected photographs from the labs of his colleagues. You know, they were, I don't know, someone was doing some optical research, someone was doing some other science, someone was, I don't know, like some electron microscope, whatever, or and he was collecting all these leftovers of experiments, and he collected it into this book, this new landscape in art and science, which is such a not just inspiring, but such a uh, I could say moving uh, approach to how photography is changing how we think about the world, and and how how images and science, you know, there's this photographs and images allow this transition back and forth from art and science, and it's uh, yeah, it's a very nice book. So you should, I mean,
Mm.
probably, I don't know if you know it or not. Do you know it?
I haven't read it.
Okay, now you know it. So yeah.
Mm.
It's like so this is the advertising 4 minutes. Um, so yeah, I think it's something like if someone is learning or studying to be a photographer, I think this book is something that they definitely have to go through. And yeah, and at at a certain point there was this other I just took this little excerpt from a text. It's like there are now more photographs in the world than there are bricks. And I was like, oh, okay, that's a nice challenge. Let's add some more. So,
Do you do
so
you know
yeah.
when that tipping point was going on? From
I'm
when
sorry.
was this? Do you know when that tipping point was coming on? Then there were
Um,
more photographs in the world than
well,
there were bricks.
he said it in 1976, or like it says 1976.
Yeah.
Well, probably around the time.
So not even at the digital area.
Well,
That's
most
interesting.
definitely not. Yeah. It's okay, sorry. It's, we are in 1976, we are 2 years before they published evidence
Hmm.
of Larry Sultan and Mike Mendel, which is another Bible.
Yeah.
So it's yeah, I think it's there is a certain penetration of. But anyway, I found it funny that he's comparing it to bricks. It's like, how do
Yeah.
you know how many bricks there are in the world? It's like, how, I mean, how do we know how many pictures are there in the world? But bricks, how do, I mean, like, how?
Today you can ask AI, but I have no
Yeah,
idea.
and you get a made up answer, and like the small letter underneath says like AI can make mistakes. Of course, yeah. But Sarkovsky probably didn't. It's like how did he know? Okay, and so I had to figure out what I want to do, and and I I thought that okay, there's this brick factory thing. I go to the brick factories. I don't want to take anything from the brick factories that much. I want to work in the factories because that's like a lab environment. I want to do this lab thing, and but at the same time, I want to talk about everything which is outside of the lab. And I had this uh, little mind map in the beginning, which I found now. I'm really happy that I found these things because now I can show. I wasn't using them really, and I made a translation to English with Google Lens, and it gave me so fucked up and translations sometimes like the elliptic, which means human scale, and it was translated to human butterfly.
Hmm.
Okay, so AI does make mistakes.
Yeah.
So, so I was thinking that okay, I take units. I will deal with units. The brick is a unit, and I will take the brick as a physical unit, and I will take like a mental or a intellectual unit as well. But okay, the brick is the physical, but then what is the intellectual? And at maybe the first time when we photographed with the workers, there was like, okay, how many bricks you can lift? And there was this one picture which I was taking. No, I'm jumping a little bit in the wrong direction. And I thought that okay, we can take this intellectual unit. We can say that the brick has weight and the intellectual unit has weight, but then what is the intellectual unit? And I was thinking, okay, let's make it responsibility. The guy who died under the uh, under the robot arm, and uh, uh, and let's say that responsibility is weight, something that you have to carry.
Hmm. Hmm.
And okay, how can we? So now I have these two moving parts. Okay, I'm going to deal with responsibility, and I'm going to photograph bricks, but every time I photograph bricks, I'm always going to think about responsibility.
Mhm.
And and so then, uh, but maybe okay, so we can move on to this one. These are my children, okay? They are like the organ pipes, but if you get down on their eye level, I found it interesting that we have their heads in one line, and the proportions are changing. So it's kind of it's not the organ pipes, but it's their the youngest feels like a different the uh, uh, not the scale, but the proportions of the different body parts are different, and I quite like this. I actually I took this picture before in that during those 2 months when I couldn't go to take
Mhm.
pictures. I was kind of like, okay, I have to work with this brick story, and but I was kind of stuck in my studio or stuck outside of the brick factory, and I was photographing whoever was near, my children, and I was more and more uh, thinking about how uh, the we take we often say that something is human scale, right? Or but what is that actually? Um, we have a photograph of Pluto. It is now in the realm of human scale. So like there is this very conservative notion of human scale, but at the same time, our hands or our devices that we make, the extensions of our body, we embrace so much of the universe, not just in space or not just in distance, but also in time, looking forward, looking backward, understanding, uh, splitting the atom, whatever. So human scale is there's no such thing anymore
Mhm.
as human scale, and so it gave me kind of like the freedom in the work that I could like how far can I go? And then I went to the brick factory where everything was orange or like this ochre uh, brown color, and this is something that they do they do all these measurements. Actually, they do similar measurements as I was doing with my kids. Uh, the actually the kids on the left, they are not my kids. The kids on the right, they are my kids. The kids on the left, they are from this archive, which I was, but probably you figured that out. Uh, and also how uh, the different types of bricks that produce, they have different characteristics, and so they are somehow, they don't use the same standard. They don't match up when you put them next to each other. So I was also thinking about like this evolution, how it works, how standards are also competing with each other for survival, and also that we know about evolution of I don't know, animals, and we are also part of evolution. We are developing, and or we are a result, or we are a temporary temporary result of evolution. But also, when you look at how bricks are, the production of bricks is developing, we can also see evolution, and we can also see different standards competing for survival, which one is going to be the best. And uh, of this is there's an analogy between the two, but there is another. another interesting element that uh, when we think about technology as well as a net, so to think about technology as a natural phenomenon, and and yeah, that was another. I will show you an example in a minute, but first I will introduce you guys to my assistant, who was at the time an Erasmus student on an Erasmus internship in Budapest and from I think from Darmstadt University. Her name is Corinna Mer, and she was my assistant doing this work. But actually, I always say, someone was asking at a certain point, why do you always say that we took the pictures?
Yeah.
And I always say, oh yeah, because me and Corinna, we were doing the thing.
I
We were
figured in my
together.
head that you had some assistant or
Yeah.
somebody with
But
you.
it's oftentimes we talk about like, I did this, I did that, but no, actually, we were while it was a road trip that we did first with this brick story, and this brick story would never develop without the conversations or without the things that we figured out while loading the cassettes for the next day. You know, we were chatting about it and figuring out how we could like how we could prank the workers next day or you know like this. So I I think it's a very important thing to mention that uh, the lady posing with that one brick is how to say a creative partner in this work,
Mhm.
uh, and I need to give credit. Um, and and so this was the trip, which I planned the trip. I like, as I said, I cannot make myself free and work on something whenever. So uh, uh, I had a roughly 2 weeks when I was able to visit 8 or 10 brick factories around Hungary and Romania and Bulgaria. And there was an idea to go to Serbia as well, but then for visa reasons, or I don't know what, we didn't go eventually. But it was a round trip. And I think the round trip was also a very important element in the work, like limiting the possibilities, limitation of movement. Okay, what we can do. I said that I'm going to take pictures only in the brick factories, and I'm going to take pictures only on this round trip. And I'm not going to, you know, go to another factory in another direction for another picture. I have to do it within that time frame and within that circle. So that would be my local, that would be my horizon. Okay. And
Mhm.
uh, how can we expand? How can we like, you know, like uh, blow that up to encompass everything? And this trip happened um, after not much after the first Russian-Ukrainian war over the Crimea, when gas was limited for Europe, and it was I think 2014 or 15,
Yep.
maybe you remember when it was, but so when we went. A few brick factories that we visited, they were shut down. They were closed. So the workers were sent away. The guard dogs were left there to die. The yeah, actually, and it was all empty. So we went to the first brick factory where there was maybe there was a guard who let us in, but nothing. And it was like a huge studio for us to do whatever. And I found this the chain of the guard dog, and uh, and I was okay. Let's make a drawing. Let's draw this trip that we are doing. So we inhabit this circle. Okay, this is going to be our the trip is our circle, just like the dog's circle is his or hers, I don't know, uh, universe. Okay, um, and so this was roughly on the trip one of the first things that we did. And here I would like to put something into the conversation. Actually, I don't know how much time we have, but I love to talk about this thing. So
I
uh,
have all the time.
yeah, you have all the time, and then you will have all the scissors to cut it into a digestible thing, right? Um, so every time I give a lecture, I always use this picture, and I will ask you now, but normally I think somehow we should devise a method how the audience can think about it. I always ask this question, which picture tells the truth? And of course, we know this is two versions of a photograph that was taken in uh, uh, China on the during the funeral of Mao. And and so that's the question. Which picture tells the truth? Do you
You
have an
asking me?
answer?
Yeah, I know that the on the top tells the truth, and the second from the bottom is the one that got published, but it's yeah, the people are placed into the picture
Actually, it's the other way
to
around.
make it look
No,
more
it's the other way
more
around.
grounded. Really?
Yeah, of course. It's the I don't know. Do you see the little arrow of? Do you see the arrow of my?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So here and on this
So they cut the
part,
people out.
yeah, they
Interesting.
cut the people out because they are the gang of four. These three and this guy. They are the Gang of Four, so they were the close allies or the close party members, the party members closest to Mao, and
Mhm.
they were kicked out of power when he died, and they were eliminated. So I think they were imprisoned or something. So maybe they were not executed, or maybe they were. I don't know. And and on the top picture, they are retouched out of the picture. So, but actually, you see missing people on the top. So the picture on the top was published in the newspapers
Mhm.
when they were already eliminated from real life. And I argue that the top picture tells the truth and the bottom picture it tells a lie, because the top one tells the truth about the reality of dictatorship, how the how the dictatorship imagines life and people, like what you can do. So dictatorships imagine that you can eliminate a person and then that person does not exist anymore, just like on the picture. But of course, there are always traces, and you can and so it's like so the top one is an honest confession of the dictatorship about itself, about how
Mhm.
it's working. The bottom one does not tell this. It is it shows you something, a reality in front of the camera lens, and that reality is deceiving. Uh, so I always show this
That's
picture for
really
my
interesting because
interpretation.
that's really interesting. It just hit my mind because there's always the question in photography about the truth of photography.
Yes, exactly.
And in that sense, you would argue, yeah, the bottom one is the truth. But what you just said on another level, it's not. So that's really
Word,
interesting.
WordPress photo is actually a scam. Like,
Yeah.
it's like those rules actually, especially now in the time of AI and everything, those rules are actually uh, okay. another. Now we are not talking about human, we're talking about some other thing. But
Yeah.
um, why do newspapers want to publish photographs that were not retouched? Because the text is a lie, oftentimes, and is an interpretation of truth, left or right, but there is some kind of a agenda behind it. Okay. So you need
Yeah.
something that you can point at that, okay, this is the truth. So what I'm telling about this happening is the truth. The photograph should be, how to say, should be manipulated to tell the truth and to question the truthfulness of the text or the interpretation or the explanation or the argument around it. So I think battery touching is actually a good way to tell the truth. Okay. But anyway, so yeah, back to human. Um, there is this I mentioned technology, right?
Mhm.
How technology became one of the how to say one of the focus points of the work, and and we I hope we all remember the guy who died before I arrived to the factory, and this picture is taken in that factory, and this was one of the last pictures. I put some lights on these robotic arms that are moving around the pallets. So it's like the bricks are collected, and these robots are lifting the pallets, and they use some kind of light traps, like infrared gates. So when something gets into the way of uh, of these little triggers, then the robot stops. But it's pneumatic, so it works with air pressure. So they always have this little bit of inaccuracy, just like human beings. They kind of sometimes you can even catch these robots, moving a little bit too far, coming back a little bit, finding the right spot, and then putting the things down. So I was like, how can we give this little bit uh, how can we create this humane how can I capture this humane uh, character of these robots? So I was playing around with these lights, um, and and um, and also, oh, it's hard to do this presentation. It was much better to come in the conversation with you. But anyway, so, it comes from the idea for this test, testing the robots comes not just from how can we test the robots, but it also comes from this archive which I was collecting, and also how um, how this same method was used to measure the movement of workers to improve efficiency
Mhm.
in production, right? The Gilbreth fatigue study was one of these in the early 20th century when they were, uh, for example, they were following the movements of bricklayers, and they were trying to figure out with these light patterns like how they could, uh, uh, um, you know, be more effective. They could produce more in a given amount of time with less effort. And I found it quite symbolic in a way how it starts with the human beings, and now in a brick factory in a normal day you get
Wow.
five people watch a computer, and everything is automatic, everything is robotized. And brick production in the time of the sheer breadth fatigue study, so like 1920-ish, uh, it was one of the most labor intensive types of work. So in a brick factory, you would get 140 people at any given time doing very, very exhausting physical work. And now you get five people tick, 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 on the computer, or driving maybe a trailer or something, or an electrician, with a screwdriver. Um,
And
so
doing very little physical work.
yeah, and for example, in one of the factories, it was I had a conversation about like that was the only job in that small town, or not even small town, like village, uh, the brick factory, and they were saying like how effective we are, how uh, efficient this new brick factory is, and I was asking like what's up with the guys, the families, and they were saying like what's with them, and I was like, it's like now it's automatic, now it's efficient, but the people who used to work here, what do they do now? So there is always a cost, and that actually I think the cost of automatization is quite high, uh, in a in some aspects. Again, some examples of the of the of the archive, uh, and here you see one thing. Actually, we used all of them as like conversation starters. Here you see the bottom left picture is the like this Ames room. Probably you're familiar with it. It's the distorted room which looks okay, but it is so it's like if you move from one end of the room and you become a dwarf, and you go to the other and you become a giant, and and I was showing this to the workers. I was always asking them questions about like the responsibility that they take, the scale of their work, like how we could represent equality, um, and these drawings were kind of used as, or these photos were used as starting points. And here on the photograph, that's a very basic demonstration of the Ames room. Uh, he's holding this one small, uh, they put these above the windows, so there's like kind of like over, this, I don't know the name in English, like a little bridge, and he was holding it for me to match the size of the guy on the right. But of course, this was a dexterity test because it's quite heavy, and so for this other guy, you can really see he's struggling to hold it. Okay, yeah, this is the a little explanation of the Ames room, and maybe I will speed up a little bit, showing some of the pictures. Um, but in the book, you see photographs that were not obviously not taken in the brick factory, right? Um, and so when you make a rule, that's the nicest thing not to keep it, right? That's always
Yeah, yeah.
such a dirty joy, not not doing it. But actually, this cave is in Bulgaria, just next to the brick factory, and these caves are formed in that clay. It's next to a river, and just next to this cave, there is the brick factory with its mine where they are taking the clay from to make the bricks. And so there are two things happening in that town: the brick factory, where are five people working, and there is a four-star hotel or five-star hotel because Russian sci-fi movies or fantasy movies are shot in these caves. So it's kind of
Mm.
like, so we went to see this cave, and there was actually they were shooting a fantasy movie about a dragon, which is collecting all the all the all the value from the world to his cave and
Mhm.
and whatever. So it was a movie set within I don't know 100 meters from the from the mine or the quarry. They call it quarry in English, I think, from the quarry of the brick factory. And so yeah, so I didn't stick to the brick factories because we allowed ourselves from in between the brick factories on the way. We allowed ourselves to take pictures. For example, the standard American living room is uh, is drawn on the roof of this abandoned mountain hideout. I don't know what is it in Transylvania. And I want to talk about a little bit about the uh, the outcome of this work. Um, here we see Otto, who was one of the um, maybe the yeah an important inspirator of this work. Um, he was our guide. So every time when I get to the factory, I got a person so that I'm safe. And I felt a little bit bad for him, you know. I was like not really knowing what I'm doing, and he was very patiently waiting. And I was asking him this one question, a stupid question actually, like, okay, I'm sorry to take so much of your time, valuable time. You cannot do your work. So, and he was like, don't worry, don't worry. This is, so this is the most productive time because and he told me that he is I don't know in one day he is so he's sitting in front of the computer is watching the bricks and he's watching the computer and the computer is counting 18,000 bricks in one day. That's his job, to make sure that the bricks are okay. 18,000. And he said that like he's working
Every day.
3 shifts, he's working 6 days a week, and he's when he goes home and when he falls asleep, he's dreaming with bricks coming. And I was like, okay, and how much is I don't know how much bricks you need for a house. Is 18,000, that sounds a lot, but how much do you need for a family home? And it was like maybe 5,000, 6,000, 8,000. And I was like, okay, and when you dream, what kind of home do you build from how what kind of house could you build from 18,000 bricks? And he was like, you know, I never thought of this.
Mm.
And and that point was I was like, fuck, this is I'm here for 30 minutes maybe. This is I'm thinking like what we could build. So maybe I could not just make some smart photography series, but maybe I could ask questions that change the way how people think about the work that they do.
Mm.
And maybe there's a benefit. Maybe there is a reason for me to be here beyond doing a series, do like the selfish thing, you know. And 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 from then on, uh, it became more or less the challenge to challenge routines, to challenge fatigue, to ask the questions which could, you know, change the way how they look at their work. Maybe they see their work differently afterwards. And
Do
yeah,
sorry, do you
yeah.
think that's also part of why everybody was so welcoming you, that you that they knew, oh, this guy's coming and we can break out of our routine?
I don't think so. I think the directors, they were a little bit nervous that I find something which is not orderly and
Mm.
and then they get into trouble. I don't know. But it turned out that the company did not really communicate too much about what I want to do in the factory. They just said, "Hey, this guy is our artist. I don't know, our photographer." Maybe they didn't even say artist. They said he's doing some photography for us. Allow him to do whatever. So probably they were a little bit, not knowing what I'm going to do and what's the point of the whole thing.
Yeah.
So I think first they were always very, very kind, very welcoming, very open to whatever ideas I had. And then along the conversations, it became clear that I'm like this, a little bit like this crazy artist who is like not even the photographer of the company. He's just a guy. But yeah, I think they were. Um, I try to welcome everyone into the world that I was, happy building, and I think there was a very 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 nice uh, mm, how to say synergy between people, uh, and probably this work would not succeed if people were uh, less helpful or less interested.
Yeah.
Actually, it's quite interesting that people who don't really have any connection to art, how interested they are in art
Mm.
when they kind of figure out how it's working, like what you are doing. Um, yeah.
Have you built connections with the people? Have they seen the outcoming work? Do you know that?
To some, not all the factories, but to some factories, we sent back to the pictures, or I took to some other factories, I took back some of the pictures. I don't really know whether uh, all the workers found themselves on the pictures or not. Um, yeah. Um, so that uh, so I don't have long long-lasting friendships with the workers, if that's the question. Um,
We do an anniversary every year.
well, it's this is the thing. It's like you cannot always go back. I quite
Yeah.
like going back. Some of the works that I do are actually about going back. There's a work I do at housing estate. I take pictures from the same point, from the same kitchen window, uh, and every 4 or 5 years, and there might be a different person living in that apartment. And it's quite nice actually to return and to show the original picture, and already they
Mm.
replaced the window, so it's not opening like this, but it opens like this, but it's the same kitchen, but it feels very different. Actually, this is also a similar thing.
Yeah.
I returned to one of these uh, towers where which is not built, it's demolished. Um,
Mm.
so it's the other way around. And I quite liked in the series this that it's not a series. When you say series, you kind of read from one side to the other.
Yeah.
And I enjoy this book to be this back and forth guessing game, like
Mm.
what is before, what is after. There are quite a lot of examples like that. There are quite a lot of pairs in the book that are like different vantage points on the same thing, or they are not the same thing photographed very similarly, or they are the same thing photographed very at a different point of time, uh, or repeated tests. Um, I quite liked this compatibility issues that come out of the work. Just like, how you can build a work, how you can build a house from bricks. Um, yeah. For example, this one is like two. I'm sorry, two two. Uh, so this is like the top-down view of one of these uh, tests, and this is the side view of the same test. That's
Mm.
they what they do. They have these machines that they put weight on the brick, and they see when it's collapsing. And when it's collapsing, that gives you a number, and then that number tells you whether the burning was okay or not. So the brick is strong enough. And I also found this quite. Uh, I, I really enjoyed this playing with analogies that things that this is like that, and and how it's the same thing with responsibility, how much you can take, when do you collapse, and can we measure that? Is there a way to test it? Um, yeah, ladies, the ladies are working in the office and they count how much, how many pallets of bricks are fitting one truck. And I was asking, okay, could you come down and lift a brick? And they were like, I don't know if I can lift it. So they never before lifted, held a proper brick in their hand. For them, this picture is the first time that these ladies hold a brick. They are working there, I don't know, 20 years, but they work in the office. Their work is different. So it's kind of like this hierarchy of work is, and I had quite a lot of experiences with that in the factory, in the structure of the company, this hierarchy is very, very important. So it's like not something that we artists do, like we do everything or anything, whatever it takes. Uh, when you work in accounting, you don't go, and it's not your job to do it, or to pack the bricks. And I think it's also I think what we were doing, it was kind of a community building thing as well, because like all these physical workers actually were standing around and laughing. And so there was this kind of like breaking these invisible barriers, or this caste system of the company. Yeah, we are learning about human scale with the workers, and of course,
I like the perspective of the left one. Like you arranged it that the perspective is like the arms are, of course,
holding the
they
bricks.
like, yeah, exactly. And
Yeah,
there's also a lot of how do you say that in English? Like when I got through the book, I had a lot of like and I don't know if it's intentional or it's just happening. There's also a lot of like military feel in it.
yeah, it does have. Yes. No, it's okay. I have a book here, which I wanted to. I
And
wanted to
this
photograph this.
picture, this that has a lot of like military vibe for
Well,
me.
yeah, that was intentional. So it's like, um, so here is a book. I wanted to take a picture of it for you guys for the presentation, but I think it's perfect if I show it like this. Sorry, it's an old copy and it's damaged. But so this book is about the. Oops. Okay. This is a book that was published, I think 1968 or something. And these are all the photographs, well, not all the photographs, but all the photographs are about Warsaw, which was bombed to the ground during Second World War, and most of the pictures document uh, like a city after a city. It's just you f see a field of bricks, and in Warsaw, I think you have like roughly 1.5, 2 meters thick ground with broken bricks because it's like you cannot really just move it away. They just cleared it to be flat and they started to build from there. So it's
Wow.
so that actually this book would be the third one, like as an inspirational material for this. It has this kind of like this manual of destruction and manual of reconstruction. Kind of like it's a documentation of like end of the world and beginning of the world at the same time. And and I quite liked this uh, oftentimes documentational approach. Like, you don't want to make a good photograph. You want to make like the best view that depicts everything in one go. And also the way how it is printed is a little bit dull in a way. Uh, so it's kind of like how to dismantle and reconstruct society. And and I took that book and another old manual of constructions as like the visual clue for the work. So how I want to deal with um, uh, so what kind of visuality I would like to use. Uh, but of course, it was flying blind because we did the round trip, but we were not developing anything. So actually, the first time I saw what we were doing was when we returned home.
Oh,
So
really?
it
That's
was,
also interesting.
yeah. Well, it's the joy of it. Now I have a different work which was published in November. And for that work, I was also not developing, and all my negatives were rotting together. So and that was more or less destroyed. So I advise people to develop as soon as you can. Okay, yeah, some samples. Okay, again, my assistant and myself. I'm A, Arion, and she's C, Corinna, with a different set of bricks. Actually, this is the kiln. This is the furnace where they burn the bricks. I have no idea why they use two different sets of bricks, but anyway. Okay. And there's one thing with the brick factory which is quite interesting, is that the brick, I mentioned this, how the brick has a face and foot and whatever, but the brick, the pasta, or I don't know, the clay, which before they burn it, is soft, and they use like some heat, like maybe hot water is mixed in it. I don't know, but it's 37 degrees and it feels like skin and it's soft. So before the brick is burnt, it is very, very human or very skin-like. You can touch it and you can feel, you know. It's a very interesting sensation. Yeah.
That's an interesting point. When I see this picture, like it's always not funny, but it's interesting with what people see or what people bring into a series of pictures when they view it, you know? Like
Hmm.
you as a photographer, you have your vision and what you wanna tell, but there's always this side of the story of the viewer just
Hmm.
interpreting it could be completely different. For me, when I I always like approach art in a way that I look at it first and then I read about it, or when there's a text, then I read it. I
Mhm.
first I just watch it, go through the book. Of course I read the title, but nothing else.
Probably you're doing it right, I think.
And it's so interesting because then I have my idea what this is about,
Mhm.
and I see my topics and my things, and and then I read about it, and it could be something completely different. But for me, this mixes together, you know.
Mhm.
And what you said before with this structure the brick has before it got burned, that it's like a like skin, and then you can shape it, and you show the picture of your inspiration with the body shaping.
Mhm.
And that was the first things that came into my mind when I watched at the series. There's so much like body in it,
Mhm.
like the human shape, the body, and also like functionality. This picture like truly speak to me in that sense when I first saw it. So interesting.
Yeah, you cannot, I mean, I cannot, um, or I should not, or maybe that's not the right thing. When oftentimes I find myself explaining,
Yeah.
what is the background, whatever. But actually, that's that's not that's not part of the work. And just like I digest works just like you. I When I have the chance not to read something, I don't read it. Uh, because oftentimes what I read is destroying that construction which
Mm.
the work built. So it's like oftentimes the text. Okay, so when you need the text to understand the work, it's not good, right? Because why would you? I mean, if the work is good enough, then why would you need the text? Sorry, but uh, sometimes, of course, you need it. But yeah, but in an ideal world, okay, there is a work, and then it speaks to you, and maybe you just feed your little intellectual guy in your head to read the text, and it's maybe interesting, maybe not. But um, and oftentimes the work for me is an is a different it's my life actually. It's a period of my life. I was living with this, not with these people that much, but with what remained after I met them. And there are so many things that we okay, it's like okay, I had a there's a Hungarian press photographer who with photographs, you always need to give a little caption. Like, okay, it's like
Mhm.
this is Kandahar, and the American troops are jumping off the helicopter. Da, 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 da. And what he did, I really like this. He's Balázs Gárdi. He's a war photographer, actually. Uh, he writes word by word what is on the picture. It's like a prompt before there were
Yeah.
prompts. He he literally writes, okay, the helicopter, the end of the helicopter is touching the ground as soldiers are jumping off into the dust. And you say, and you see it, and that's
Yeah.
perfect. You don't need any other background. It's like it's the 85 infantry crew is doing something in Kandahar. Who cares? It's like, I mean, yeah, it's interesting, but you get my point, right? And for example, with this guy, uh, who, so for him, he's maybe the main character of the entire work because, but that's personal. That's like you don't have to know it and you don't have to have any relationship to this, but I do. And the thing is that I mentioned responsibility, right? and uh, how responsibility is outsourced in the system of the company. Uh, so the brick factory is almost completely automatized, but there is an element which cannot be controlled really. Is the thing, the pallets are made of wood. That's the standard way. And when they put all the bricks on the pallets, there is a some instability, and sometimes the pallets are breaking, and then normally accidents happen. And so, what's smart move? Not to fix the problem, but to outsource responsibility. So what they do, they uh, hire subcontractors who are dismantling and remaking the pallets in the fact on the factory grounds, but they are a different company, and this different company is hiring a gypsy boss, like a capo, whatever, and he is then paying daily workers to do it. So there are four levels of distribution or outsourcing of responsibility. So when a brick pallet is breaking and some accident happens, it's never the fault of the company. It's always the fault of someone at the end of the line. And this guy is at the very bottom of this chain of responsibility. And maybe I will move forward, and then I will get to that one photograph. Uh, we are passing a few things along the way. Um, but so there was I told you about this caste system and the hierarchy in the company, and there was this uh, one worker who was uh, working on a platform, sitting there in front of a computer, and 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 I wanted to ask him to lay down on this platform as if it's a room, and if you had a bed, you would be laying on that bed. And he told me that no, 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 I'm not laying down on the ground because he was like, he was a serious guy with a serious job. And I was like, okay, no problem. I get this other guy, him, and he will do the job for me on your platform. And he was so pissed off. He was so jealous. Immediately this thing was broken. The
The hierarchy,
uh,
yeah.
the hierarchy. I was not respecting any of it, and I didn't really care, but it was really surprising to see how um, it's like how these positions are immediately rewritten. Um, yeah, so that yeah, for me, this guy is um and actually the dignity that this young guy took this very awkward situation for him. So he's not actually allowed to go into the factory
Hmm.
because he's this subcontractor. So it's like he was quite taking it with quite a lot of dignity. This thing. Okay, we are jumping from through the work. Um, yeah, the yeah. What is what is what is the standard? Okay, so what are the human proportions? Um, and well, I just collected a few pictures. Like this is the Vitruvian figure in the corner. Uh, he's practicing the Vitruvian figure in front of this concrete tube. And there was also actually for a few, almost a year, this drawing that we made was left on the wall of the So like every day they were passing the Neufeld figure, and this is another. This is in what's the name of the town? That would be okay. I forgot the name of the town, but it's an important town because it's in Transylvania. Sorry, Romania, and this is the town where they executed uh, 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 the Romanian dictator and his wife. So Ceausescu was executed in this town. I don't remember the name of the town, uh, but I can remember very quickly. Um, and we were just passing through. This was in between two brick factories, and it's quite a rundown place. And so I we drew a few Vitruvian figures or Neufeld figures on the walls. So this is the guy, and this is the platform. This is about the size of a bedroom, and I found it quite nice that this platform is like resembling, there's the even the little fan is there and everything, and you can imagine that there is a bed and he's sleeping on the bed. And I think it's better that this other guy said no because he was a little bit too big, too corpulent, too white.
And you could also like I watched some book reviews of your
Mhm.
work, and then when it comes to that picture, the critics always tell like, yeah, this is the embodiment of the worker being imprisoned in the fabric, and like it's just collapsed because of work and technology.
But I mean, that's in it. Probably it is in it. I cannot think of
Mm.
this because I know the other
Yeah.
story. Uh, but that's not a problem. There's one thing I quite like. There are two exposures of this photograph. I had the time and to do two shots.
Mhm.
And in the background, the robotic arm, which you can spot, uh, in the meantime moved and started a different segment of the work. And I made two enlargements, one small and one very big. And in the exhibition space, it's always set that there is like they are like this. One is
Mhm.
like in the back wall, the big one. And so there's a point in space where you stand and you will see two identical sized images, which uh, which have this. There's only one small different, minor difference. It's like this robot is doing the work. There's nothing, this total idleness, but there is some it's very noisy and there's lots of work, but it's like very
Mhm.
small movement in the background. But there's this huge. The Ames room is actually happening. I quite like that. So
I
yeah.
really like the question of work and yeah, what work is, what it should be, and what you get out of work. That's the question is raising in me.
And also the question is like what um so whether so for whom you are working, okay? So
Mhm.
like who is the beneficiary of the work that you are doing? And okay, so I think we you asked this or you said this in the right moment because Florin in one factory and Florina, they are like Adam and Eve. They by accident share the same name, the male and the female version. And he is, I had this, I found these little walls, which they use to, when they are welding something, so the sparks are not jumping everywhere, they cover this. And And I asked everyone as a sort of like a test to make a drawing of the most important thing in your life, or it's your home, it's your dream home, or it's your family, or so make a imagine that. And of course, there are these kind of childish drawings that they made on these walls. But what was very interesting that the next year when I went back, these drawings were there. So they for a year they
Mm.
had an exhibition of their own work. And it's kind of like, okay, the question was like, okay, how would the house look like that you would build from the bricks that you make? It's like oftentimes people were like, oh, okay, this is a new idea. Like, okay, we tested it on Otto just two times back. But so there was, and there is again, I think if they didn't find it important or relevant, they would erase it or they would not kind of use it as an exhibition. How can you decode the code actually? That would be also a question which I should ask. There's these heart shapes. I was like, can you make a diagram of the most important things in your life? And she started to draw hearts, and I was like, oh, it's not going to be good. I told myself, and Corina was kicking me, like, no, that's perfect, perfect. Don't stop her, don't stop her. So yeah, you need. This is the thing. I'm a guy. I just simply thought that this is a very functional work. It's like
Mm.
there's no room for hearts, and Corinna, this female assistant, was like conscious and realized how what does it mean actually. So I think there's a yeah. I just realized this now. So um, and what she drew that you see that not heart shaped, that square, it says fabrica. So
Mm.
the factory is an important thing in the life, but it's not heart shaped. It's and it's kind of like cuts into the
It even
sun,
cuts into the heart.
cuts into the heart, and the heart is the sun. I mean, not son, but her son.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's
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 really
interesting.
like it's
Yeah,
really symbolical. It cuts into the heart of the sun, which is the most important or the biggest love,
yeah.
but
Of
it's
course, you
like
need it.
symbolically like the factory is important in her life, but it cuts away time from the sun.
Yeah, yeah,
You could interpret it in that way. Hmm.
yeah. So Flori makes a drawing of his house, of his home. Although he works in a brick factory, he never imagined how he would build his dream house, never made a drawing of how it would look like. So it's like how much space and time your work occupies in your mind. And I think there is a difference. When you work for yourself, it's different because when you work for yourself, it's always you always focus on the outcome. There's always an outcome, I think. And I think in this industrial age, we oftentimes think about work as a time stolen from our lives.
Mm.
Like we are not thinking about the outcome. We are thinking about it's a daily routine. And I think it's important. It should be important to always know what is the outcome, or because arriving to the next picture, we are going to die sooner or later. Um, there is a this one is actually a cross reference between different works. This is on the right. There is my mother's garden, and when she died, before she died, she left rocks hanging from the trees so that the branches are bending downwards. So it's how to say it's cleaner or more comfortable,
Mhm.
and so went to the when I went to the brick factory and it turned out that they every year they have this one kind of like a May fair in the factory and they plant a tree every year, but of course they plant it and never look back. So it's kind of like it's there, it's you see it's like it's growing, it's crooked, absolutely. So we were like playing with this, hanging the bricks on them too.
I love that picture. When
So
I when I go through the book, I really loved it. It tells a lot of when I hear you talk, it's also a lot about responsibility and the weight on your shoulders
yeah, yeah,
with the bricks.
it's Florina. Yeah, I think we are slowly arriving to the at least the end of the presentation. Um, or yeah, it's the yeah, there is. So this is how it looks. Okay, maybe there's something which I would like to, you know, tell how it's interesting how the books or the book is different from the work itself. So the work is quite a lot about the puzzle that you can like actually I made units of 4, 5 or 3 or 4. Did you ever play Tetris?
Mhm.
Probably everyone played Tetris. You have these bricks falling and you're building a wall, but actually you have to destroy the wall. So it's kind of like an endless thing. You have to make it as long as possible. And so I made these units, and every time when I do the exhibition, there's a different constellation which I combine, and and there was for a time there was the thinking was that the book should be like this, so the book should follow the same pattern. Um, but luckily, I think uh, I I realized that the book and the work, I mean the exhibited work and the book, are not the same thing, and the book operates in time, the exhibition operates in space, and that these two things cannot be totally overlapped or cannot be brought to total agreement.
Was that difficult when you made the book to find like the starting point and the end point?
Actually, not, because there was a very funny thing. I started to number the pictures in the order how I picked them from so like okay, the first picture I was like, okay, this is going to be in the series, so I give it number one. And then I was, developing some other whatever, and then this is how it grew. So the first 25 pictures, number 1 to 25, they are the ones which were given to the company collection. They are the
Mm.
core, we can say. And the rest, 25 to 79, actually to 80, they are the other, they are the extended family, right? So no, there was actually no. I just put pictures 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, one after the other. There was a thinking like I should do these constellations and maybe somehow, but then, I mean, the book is the container. You are going to page back and forth anyway, so it's like it's not. I mean, it should be a play, so I'm not like okay. If you follow from the front cover to the back cover, you see not the chronology, not the basically not you're not going to see any other logic than the way how Orion thinks about the importance of of the pictures, of how successful the pictures were. So it was kind of a thing like this. And I didn't. uh, one or two occasions I flipped one or two of the pictures when you couldn't, there was a horizontal one and there was a vertical one and you couldn't find so it was necessary to change the order. I think it's like maybe two places. Yeah, and then there's another thing when you make a book, and when the book is ready, you cannot change it anymore, and then something happens. Uh, when the printers were preparing the next sheet, they were um, they were using the already printed some of the already printed pages. So we were standing there with the graphic designer and we were like giving them these sheets. Okay, like, can you test on this one? And we had so many these lucky accidents. How two different pictures are printed over each other. So I made uh, a separate series afterwards. I was thinking like, okay, if I didn't do this book, maybe I should do another one with these overlaps. But anyway, I just found these now. I had these, we photographed them and I didn't really use them that much. Um, okay, so here is the book. And you can turn the cover inside out, whether you want to see the Otto or whether you want to see the collection or the starting point of the whole thing. Um, okay, maybe I can stop yes. Uh, can I add one more thing, which I forgot, and I think it's important?
Sure.
Uh, there was um, um, we talked about the CEO of the company, and I heard that they really uh, they really liked this approach. I I kind of considered while making the book, I considered this work to be sort of like a message in a bottle towards the CEO. Because there is oftentimes CEOs, you mentioned Elon Musk, maybe he's not the type of guy, but normal CEOs, they say that the company is a big organism. Each worker is an equal cell, equal actor within the body of this big company. The CEO is just one cell, and the worker is one cell, and everyone is taking responsibility for everyone. But that's a lie. That's not true. That's absolutely not true. And I think with this I was hoping, I don't know if it happened, but I was hoping that this work makes it not to the workers, or not only to the workers, but makes it to the CEOs. Because there I think there's very little um, so there should be a loop back. There should be, message back to the. So there was a thinking whether we should take a photograph of the CEO for the book, or
Mm.
or the directors or the heads of the factories, and we avoided it because it's so not to make the mistake or not to let people believe that they are equal parts, equal clogs in the system.
Mm.
Um, and I think for me that's an important mission with the work that it ends up in the hands of people who make the decisions, who fire people, and who hire people. So I don't know. Yeah.
Was there ever the thought to not be too critical? Because it's kind of an assignment, but do you know what I mean with that?
Uh, to be more thankful for the assignment.
No, no. How you say that?
Okay. No, I think I
You could read the book. You could also read it like a critic on capitalism and and the use of the workers
Mhm.
on some level? And was there ever a thought, oh, I can't be too critical with the pictures of
Okay,
that?
so when I take a, when I accept an assignment, there's always a saying that someone tells you what you should do or what they expect you,
Mhm.
and I take assignments when I do something different. Okay, so I mean, I I think they come to me because they want what I think, not what they think. And I'm critical, sorry, and I'm and and I think there is a tremendous amount um, of responsibility not taken, even though the whole entire system communicates that it's like super careful, super controlled, super responsible, everything is safe, all this.
Mhm.
But at the same time, when you say it's a criticism on capitalism or industrialism, maybe it is because I think there is uh, um, this mechanization and standardization is actually diverting attention away from what is important and not just on the level of the workers, but on the level of society globally. And that, I mean, my job is I was hired to do this job, to take the job of conscience. So that's why I'm paid in this whole system. I think art. Sometimes someone said that it's like totally stupid. Maybe you can correct you can agree or disagree. I think that the role of art and especially photography is to be the conscience of society. We identify the problems or the things that don't really work. And those are the things that are interesting, actually.
Mhm.
And they are interesting because there is a systemic problem. And when there is a systemic problem, you show it and you fulfill the function of art. And so this is the thing when they say that like art is not necessarily useful in society, or there's like um, so the artists are like these extravagant, irresponsible, I don't know, free riders, right? In society, they are not really contributing that much. I think art does the most important thing. It takes the responsible look on systems, and it criticizes oftentimes, or it calls your attention on what is not working, what is important, what could be a better goal to do. And that's like super important. It's a super important job. So if you take art and artists and what artists do seriously, it's a I think it's a very, very important job in the world. And I hope that when I was critical, I hope that the CEO understood it
Mhm.
and and maybe gave a second thought to that little preface that we often see in yearly reports, that the company is a big organism and every worker, even the CEO, is just one cell in this organism. It's not true.
And that
So
was like that was the perfect ending of the talk, I think.
yeah.
But
Also because I repeated it because already said it a little bit earlier.
uh,
Yeah.
I really like
So
it.
there's
But man,
repetition again.
I really enjoyed the talk, and thank you for like talking about this book and this work. it's really like one of the most fun books I've saw in the last couple of years. I really, really like it.
Thank you
But
very much.
I it also plays into this thing that you can read the book or the work from whatever side you're starting. Normally I ask the people at the beginning why and how they found photography, but I'm just asking you at the end now.
My both of my parents are painters, and I I grew up with my mother. I didn't know that there are other uh, serious, responsible, productive jobs. I thought art was the thing which I had on my horizon, and that was the thing. Of course, photography came uh, through encounters with magazines like National Geographic, and and uh, uh, I fell in love with the teacher of my high school photo club. I was like, she didn't know. That was enough. And, and stuff like this. Um, Maybe uh, I wanted to mention another inspiration, uh, which I would, yeah, I would feel bad if I didn't. It's probably, I'm really happy that you like this book and you say that it's fun. But there is another book which is even more fun. That is The Great Unreal of Tayo Honorato and Nico Krebs. Tayo Honorato, Nico Krebs, they are a Swiss uh, artist duo.
Ah, yeah, I
They
know
have
this.
this like large format
Yes.
uh, book, and I really, really loved how it's working, and and I I think that photo books that make you go back and forth and question what you see, and find find the piece the stories together. They are they are very nice. So I think it's um, um, yeah, maybe it's, I don't know, maybe next time. Sometime you should invite them. They are, I don't know if they are fun or not, but the book I really like.
I like this too. Man, thanks for coming on. Like the last 10 minutes, mm, really like reassured me that it's important to make these talks and that art and art photography is really important. I'm a young father and I really think I have to show my son the importance of this art world. And yeah, that was beautiful. The last 10 minutes was really beautiful and it grated me that this is really important.
Well, thank you for the conversation. You made it. So I was just I was just clapping, you know. So it's a really nice thing, and I quite like the title of this series.
Hmm.
It's can you repeat it? The four F letters
Yeah,
font.
it's functional freedom, financial fitness, because actually the two topics are finance and fitness, but
Mhm.
there's also a place for art.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I
Wonderful.
move
That's
them around.
yes. That was for me. It was convincing immediately. Like I want to do that.
Really.
Yes.
I was thinking about that, um, like because if I got my email, I would think so. But what I have to do with these two topics? Nothing. Why he's inviting me?
Anyway, I found it very interesting and inspiring and fun. So Okay, thank you very much,
Thank you.
and I hope it will be joyful for the listeners as well, and when time allows, I'm happy to see it again.
Yeah,
It will be difficult to listen to myself, but
of
that's another
course.
thing. Yeah. Okay. So
Let me see. Where's the